Well, the Dodgers are going to face the Padres in the NLDS just like everyone wanted. Maybe didn't want. Either way, that's what we're getting. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. This is a daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. And you can make it easier on your show by subscribing and be notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live like we are here on Wednesday night. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. My name is Vince Samperio. I'm usually joined by co-host Jeff Snyder, but Jeff is out today, so it'll just be me. And Jeff and I have been covering the Dodgers for a decade now. We've been doing this podcast for longer than half the decade. So 6 seasons now doing this podcast, a little bit more doing the Dodger podcast. So we've seen a lot of Dodgers. We've talked a lot about the Dodgers, and, we've been around the Dodgers a lot. So we are here, or I am here, I guess, today to talk about the NLDS because right now, not too long ago, the Padres wrapped up. They swept the Braves in the 2 out of 3, or not even 2 out of 3. They swept them, and the Dodgers will face the Padres in the NLDS starting on Saturday. It might be something people wanted. It might be that people didn't want, depending how your fandom goes. But either way, that's what we're getting here starting Saturday. Just a quick thing here. I'm in the process of moving, so don't have my full setup. So if it looks a little different, looks a little darker, just know that, I'm in the moving's a difficult process. So we're in the process of that. But it was. You thought maybe the Braves had a chance. They scored first. They got on the board. But then the Padres knocked out Max Fried with 5 runs. And then you thought maybe there was another chance to be had by the Braves because Joe Musgrove exited the game early. And the Padres had a impromptu bullpen game. But that wasn't the case because they got within 5-4, but that's as close as they got. And now the Padres will head to LA on Saturday. It's exciting as a baseball fan. It's exciting. This is the 2 teams you wanted to see play. This is the 2 teams that battled down to the last week for the NL West. These are 2 of the teams that had, the better second halves in all of baseball. But, overall record still one of the better teams. But second halves for sure, these were the 2 of the best teams. And it's a little bit of a revenge game or a revenge series, I guess, for the Dodgers. They beat the Padres in 2020. The Padres beat them in 2022. And, this could be the rubber match, as they say, in terms of that. Obviously, we know the Dodger side of things. They're coming in not as – maybe not – I wouldn't say not as confident, but not as roster-wise, not as confident as they could have been with Tyler Glasnow, maybe even Clayton Kershaw or anyone else. But regardless of that, Dave Roberts announced that the Game 1 starter or Brandon Gomes, one of them announced – that Game 1 starter, most likely going to be Jack Flaherty. Game 2 starter, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. We'll get into that right now because there's different ways to go about it depending on your thought process. If you go with Yamamoto in Game 1 and Flaherty in Game 2, if you go to a Game 5, it's possible that Flaherty could pitch in relief in Game 5. So you got 2 chances out of him. I think of it the other way where if Flaherty goes Game 1, he can go Game 5 and the Dodgers will get 2 Flaherty starts at the very least. With Yamamoto not having the ability to go every 4 days, every 5 days, it really – the Dodgers, I'm sure, have it planned out for the entire month, assuming they go sweep every series, assuming they go full 5-7 games every series. I'm sure the Dodgers have it all planned out to what they want to do in terms of Yamamoto. But, I like it. If the Dodgers are going to have to win – with those 2 guys, so the order doesn't particularly matter. And if you get, Flaherty in a Game 5 situation, you like your chances there. And then you would have Yamamoto to start game one of the NLCS if the Dodgers do advance. So it sets you up in that realm. It's one of those things where you just got to go out and do it. It was, the Padres put out Michael King and then Joe Musgrove and then Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease did not get to pitch in the series, so now he will likely start game one, I would imagine, for the Padres on Saturday. So we got Cease, we got Flaherty. The Dodgers have gotten to Cease a couple times this year, so maybe this is a little bit of a blessing in a sense, unless I guess the Padres could try out Yu Darvish there. Either way, like Yu Darvish has had success against the Dodgers. Michael King has had some success against the Dodgers this year specifically. Musgrove has not had success against the Dodgers, but he did pitch well against them to a certain extent this year. So regardless, but it's one of those things where, we could have rooted for different things. All I was rooting for in this series was it for go to game 3, because you get to game 3, you burn another starter, and that's for an advantage to be had for being the number 1 seed. The first round has to go 3 games, and that's kind of the annoying part of the way it's all set up right now for the postseason in the sense of how MLB did it. Like now, like I guess it's different for a team like the Padres, because the Padres' number 3 starter could be a number 1 for almost most other teams. If they were facing another team, it depends, because then if you fought till the end to try to get into the postseason, then that guy's not going to pitch in the wild card series, but then could pitch on side. So again, Jeff talked about it yesterday. We've talked about it before in the past, how not enough incentive for being the number 1 seed. But regardless of all that, the Dodgers have to show up and play. The Dodgers have to show up and prove that they are the better team. And it's one of those where it's exciting, because that the Padres can bring the best out of the Dodgers, as well as the Dodgers clearly bring out the best out of the Padres at times. And it's one of those things where these teams know each other, but not as well as years past. Like in years past, these teams played each other 19 times a year, and most of the time you'd have series almost every month throughout the entire season. This year was a little weird because they had the Korea games early on, and then they played early on, and then they didn't play for a while, and then they played this second to last series of the season when the last time teams had played, they were a little bit different when they played in July. So it's not as intense in the sense of these teams knowing each other, because they didn't get to face certain guys. I mean, the Padres got to Yamamoto the first couple of times, but they haven't faced them in forever. So who knows? He might have a different way of attacking. They might not know exactly what to expect anymore. Flaherty, they got to face him once, but it's not someone that they faced multiple times throughout the year. So it's going to be interesting for sure. And obviously the intensity is going to be up in terms of the fans, in terms of on the field, and all that type of stuff. And we'll get a little bit into intensity here in the next couple ones, but here it is. The Dodgers unfortunately have to play a team with 90, what they finished with 93 wins in the first round, and with one of their best starters available because they swept the first series. But if the Dodgers are going to win the World Series, you have to beat good teams along the way, and you have to beat the best along the way. And, realistically, the Padres are one of the best teams, and that's just kind of the way things go. And, could the Dodgers have played a Mets or Brewers team that none of them look that great, and they split the first 2, and now they're going to a game 3? Would that have been more ideal? Yeah, obviously it would have been more ideal, but hey, you got to play who you got to play. And, like I said, I'm excited as a baseball fan. I wouldn't say terrified as a Dodger fan in the sense of I'm terrified of the Padres. The thought of losing to the Padres is obviously what makes it all a little bit more. And I think that's the biggest part of this. Like, I don't know, obviously the Padres played the Dodgers well this year, but when it came down to it, brass tacks, when it mattered, the Dodgers beat them 2 out of 3 to secure the division. And, you got to imagine that, or hope that count. Not imagine. You got to hope that counts for something. We've talked about regular season doesn't matter, and this is the perfect case for it. Like in 2022, the Dodgers dominated the season series. Didn't matter at the end. This time, the Padres dominated the season series, but we'll see if it ends up mattering. And, there's different things to get into, but we'll start talking about Dodgers specific. Brandon Gomes, Dave Roberts spoke to the media today. We'll have some of that and talk about what the Dodgers strategy is for building out the roster and some updates on guys that are hopefully going to play this weekend. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn about. And right now, no better way to go explore San Diego if you haven't already. I know when they do play in San Diego, it'll be middle to or early to middle of the week. But hey, with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you're going to find your perfect stay. Go take a couple of days off, go spend some time in San Diego, and maybe the Dodgers will clinch down there. So even in your baseball rivals city during the postseason, Booking.com's got you loaded with a wide variety of choices across the U.S., and you can go incognito to all your baseball rival cities. So go to Booking.com to get exactly the right U.S. stay for you. They can help you book a stay close to your home team or rival stadium. Yeah, if you're coming to Dodger Stadium and you're not from LA, you can also use Booking.com to help you get settled there. So from hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts to cute bed and breakfast stays, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers. Your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. You can subscribe, make it easier, and get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live like we are here on Wednesday night. Remember, you can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. You can also check out Locked On Dodgers Postcast with host Pete Fox live after most Dodger games on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel. All right, so Joe Musgrove might be out for the Padres. They will still have three solid starters in Yu Darvish, Dylan Cease, and Michael King. So it's not a huge deal, but at least the Dodgers get a little bit of help in the sense of not a full strength team coming into Dodger Stadium, assuming he's out. They called it right elbow tightness. I got to imagine that means he's going to be out, but who knows? But let's talk about the Dodgers. Enough about the Padres. The Dodgers, they had an optional workout team workout on Wednesday, but Brandon Gomes and Dave Roberts spoke to the media. Brandon Gomes had more of the updates on player specifics. He said Freddie Freeman will look to face live pitching this week. Obviously, we know he's dealing with the sprained ankle. Clayton Kershaw isn't any closer to facing hitters. And, he gave the announcement of Flaherty Game 1, Yamamoto Game 2. But one of the interesting things was talking about position players and not knowing if they'll go 13 position players, 13 pitchers, or 14 position players and 12 pitchers when it comes down to the roster construction. For a 5-game series, obviously you can get away with having 14 and 12 because you only need, 4 starting pitchers. You don't need to have, with the days off, like, you play one game, day off, one game, day off, another game. So all the days off, like, you don't need a full 13-man pitching staff. But the way the Dodgers might have to attack this postseason, you might need a full 13-man pitching staff because, you don't know what you can count on from any starter realistically at any point, but you really don't know what to count on from Walker Buehler in sense of length. You don't know, we've seen Landon Knack, and he's pitched really well early in games, but kind of falters a little bit towards the end or runs out of gas or whatever the case is. Maybe 2 times through a lineup is all you're going to ask from him. And then you have somebody else with some length. And, I ultimately think the Dodgers will go 13 and 13 just because it makes more sense for their roster and how it's built out and how they have to attack pitching, not having the starting pitching that, they could have had. So it makes sense for me to get that extra arm, whether it's, a guy like Ben Casparius, I can give you some length, whether you don't have to choose between Casparius and Edgardo Henriquez or something like that, I think it just makes more sense to carry as many pitchers as you can because realistically, like when it comes to position players, when you're going from 13 to 14, the big thing is you could add Kevin Kiermaier to the roster or James Outman to the roster. And, no offense to them, but they're not bringing you anything offensively. And, you might need to help defensively, but I think the help of an extra arm on the pitching staff outweighs the benefits of having an extra position player, even if he's really good at defense in center field. So I don't think they'll ultimately go with that, but I do think they're having conversations about it and thinking of, what they're going to need and how it's going to go. But Yeah, it makes more sense to carry the 13 pitchers and attack it that way. So one of the things, with Freddie Freeman, I guess the one thing that could be reasoning for this is with Freddie Freeman not being 100%, and Miguel Rojas not 100%, but he's probably further along than Freddie Freeman is. He's expected to go. Dave Roberts did say that Freeman's sprained ankle will be, quote, limiting when it comes to running the bases and on defense. So maybe they want to carry Kiermaier in order to have a runner late in the game. Like, let's just say late in the game, Freddie Freeman hits a single. He's probably not going to be your best option to score on a ball in the gap. So maybe that is, you see how we find things out in real time, or we figure it out of what they're thinking about. So, but yeah, that might be the case. Like, it might be like, okay, we know Freddie is compromised and we want to have backup for that. So we're going to have an extra guy on the roster specifically for running late in the game when Freddie Freeman gets on base. Like, that might be something that makes a lot of sense. And, maybe, I don't know if it still outweighs the extra arm, because, in that sense, you just let your guys play. Like, you're going to play matchups here and there as the game gets later in terms of, maybe pinch hitting or anything like that. But realistically, like, your guys are going to play. It's either going to be, I would imagine it's going to be Pages in right and Mookie at second against a lefty, which the Padres don't have any starting lefties, which means that it's going to be Lux at second and Mookie in right. And the lineup's pretty set. Like, you're going to have Smith behind the plate. You're going to have Freddie at first. You're going to have, Rojas at short. You're going to have Muncy at third. You're going to have, Edman in center. You're going to have Teo in left and Mookie in right. Like, it's pretty much settled there, especially facing the Padres, knowing that you're going to have the right-handed starters, and they have Morejon, they have Matsui as lefties out of the pen, and Taylor Scott. But it's ultimately it's not going to be the biggest thing. Like, you might get one at bat in a whole series, and that one at bat might be the biggest at bat of the whole series. But I don't think you take down your pitching in order to maximize one at bat when your pitching is going to maximize more than one at bat or more than one inning or more than one game. So it makes more sense to have it that way. But there's a reason they're not settled, and that's probably the reason. They're going to have to see how Freddie feels. Realistically, if Freddie is too hurt, like, they're just gonna have to replace him on the roster, and Max Muncy will move over to first base, Kiki will play third, like they said, and the Dodgers will go from there. So hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully Freddie's been resting and icing and whatever else you have to do to help out a sprained ankle, and hopefully he's not compromised to the extent that they feel a need to have an extra player on the roster in order to make up for him not being able to run late in games. Or it might just say, hey, Dave, think really hard if you want to make this pinch hit opportunity right here, because it might be a situation later in the game where you need a pinch runner, and now you don't have that because you used him on, a pinch hitter early in the game. So it's all in the strategy of what it is. But when it comes down to it, if the Dodgers just play well, they won't have to worry about a lot of this stuff, because they'll handle their wins a lot easier than having to come down to one at bat or one decision or anything like that. Like, the less amount of decisions we can give Dave Roberts, not obviously I've disagreed with him in the past. Ultimately, I think Dave Roberts is a good manager, but I think all in all, the less decisions you could give any manager, the better, because you just want the players to go out and do their job and play the game, and show who's a better team based on that, not based on which guy can strategize or which guy happen. It's not even strategizing. Sometimes it's just a matter of, I picked this guy to go pitch and he didn't do his job, and now I look like the guy that didn't make the right decision. So other things to talk about in regards to the Dodgers, Dave Roberts made more comments about the Dodgers' intensity and edge and all that type of stuff. And we talked about it before being maybe a little bit of lip service. Maybe Roberts is continuing that, and why I don't think he has to keep continuing with that narrative. But regardless, that's the way they're going about it right now. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL is here, and you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel because it's America's #1 sports book. And when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the page where you place your bets. And right now, you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com, place a $5 bet, and boom, you get $200 in bonus bets. And hey, why not go put $5 on the Dodgers to win the series or win game one, or Shohei Ohtani to hit a home run or something like that? Because ultimately, all you got to do is place the bet. It doesn't matter. And you get that $200 in bonus bets from FanDuel. So head over to FanDuel.com, download the app, check it all out, and go get you some FanDuel. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all, and it's so easy. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I am a pretty much daily Prize Picks user, and it's a lot of fun because, these games that didn't ultimately matter to me as a Dodger fan, they can matter to you as someone who uses Prize Picks, because the other day I hit with Framber Valdez less on his strikeouts and whoever he was facing more on his strikeouts, and boom, I turned $5 into $15. So it's as easy as that. You pick more or less on at least 2, all the way up to 6 players. And, you can win up to 100 times your money depending on how you divide that up and which demons and goblins and all that stuff you pick. So Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action, and it's available in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And remember, right now, Prize Picks, you can download the app, use code LOCKEDONMLB, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's download the Prize Picks app, use code LOCKEDONMLB, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Want to thank you for being an everydayer if you are one. If you're not one, you can become one by listening or watching every day. All you got to do is go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. That's how you get beyond the podcast. Become an everydayer. All you got to do is watch or listen every day. You can subscribe, make it easier. And if you're not an everydayer, you can listen or watch, 1 or 2 times extra a week and move your way on up to everydayer status. And now you can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You get texts from us giving you big news, updates, thoughts, things like that in regards to the Dodgers. If you can't follow along on social media all day, we got you covered in that regard. So make sure you go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. All right, so one thing real quick that we didn't touch on in the first 2, the Dodgers announced that Fernando Valenzuela is stepping away from the broadcast booth for the remainder of this season to, quote, focus on his health, and the hope is that he can return for the 2025 season. We know that there is a report out there that said he was hospitalized. We have no way to verify that, but, we wish him the best in his health journey, and hopefully he can return in 2025 and beyond, because we all love Fernando and he's a big part of the Dodger and LA community. So hopefully he gets right there. But wanted to talk about some comments that Dave Roberts made when it was his turn to talk to the media, and kind of becomes more of what he's been saying recently in terms of the Dodgers' intensity and everything else like that. It's one of those where we know he talked, like the first time we ever heard Dave Roberts talk about the intensity, and that was after the 2022 series, after the Dodgers lost to the Padres in the NLDS. He said that the Dodgers had more, or that the Padres had more intensity, and maybe that contributed to them not playing as well or not winning the series. He that's the first time we really acknowledged that part of it. And now, he hadn't said anything last year about it. This year, he's been saying recently, the Dodgers, he wants them to leave it all on the field. If you don't feel exhausted after the game, you're not doing it right. He wants the Dodgers to have that intensity, bring that intensity and everything else. Today, he said that he's noticing the Dodgers have a little bit different edge this October. He said, quote, hearing about guys not caring who we play. They've got to beat us. We have a lot to prove. A lot of people have doubted us. So I think our guys have kind of embraced that. And, he said the players are walking around with a little bit of an edge and, whatever, intensity, focus, whatever the words you want to use in the sense of what he's doing or what he's seeing. I think he's crossing into a lose-lose situation, because if you're saying all this stuff and the Dodgers don't win, then it was all for naught. Like, oh man, they have an edge and blah, 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 and all this, and they look different. And then you lose, and it's like, well, what did it matter? And I think, I wouldn't say Dave Roberts is saying all this stuff because that's what fans and maybe media and other people want to hear or want to see, like, oh, the Dodgers do care, like they do care right now. But I do think that subconsciously that's maybe playing a little bit of a part into it, because, like, at the end of the day, what does Roberts saying he sees that really benefit? It doesn't benefit anything unless they win. And even then, like, if they win at all, nobody's going to care that they had a different edge and everything else. And it reminds me a little bit of the 2020 NLCS when I think it was either game 5 or game 7 when they were talking about the Dodgers, and the Dodgers text group chat was going crazy. And, they were all like, this is what we got to do and blah, blah, and all this. I think it was game 7. And then, AJ Minter starts the game and they strike out, like 5 of the first 6 hitters strike out. And, you're like, well, I'm glad they were in the group chat. Like, I'm glad they were talking, because it doesn't show right now. And, obviously the Dodgers ended up winning that game and everything else. It might have been game 5. I don't remember. But either way, I remember it's one of those games that they were talking about it on the broadcast. Like, the Dodgers group chat, they were getting hyped, getting ready. They know what they have to do. They're tired of losing, blah, blah, this other stuff. And then the game started, and you're like, well, that looks exactly the same as the other games. But that's kind of where we're getting to the point where Roberts is saying all these things about the intensity and the edge, and they look different and everything else. And it's just like, you know what? All that stuff ultimately doesn't matter, and I'll advocate for intensity and all that type of stuff more so than Jeff. Jeff is completely out on it. I'll say, like, I think it does play a part in it, but I don't think it plays a part in it to the extent of right now. Like, I think that, yeah, the Dodgers had the best record in baseball. They should feel a type of way, but also it feels like they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because of the way the last 2 postseasons ended. And, I think it maybe is projecting a little bit out there of like, okay, this is what we're going to do different, or this is what we did different, or whatever the case. Obviously, the biggest thing is the way they handled this week off. They did it a little bit different than the last 2 years. Remains to be seen if that's going to be any difference, but they're trying it. They're trying to do something different. And I can respect that, because that's something physical that can be, I don't know if it can be measured in this small of a sample size, like, one season, but at the very least, like, you can say, well, it looked a little bit different. Because I think what people forget is that in 2022, after the layoff, like, the Dodgers won game 1 of that series. Obviously, that year, the Padres were a little bit more depleted in terms of starting pitching, and the Dodgers had, lined up their ace, and they won that game. And then they lost the other 2 games. Last year was obviously different because they got smacked in the mouth that first inning and never recovered. And it looked like maybe they weren't prepared, or, you could word it that way, but you can't prepare for, being down in every single game. It's hard to prepare that way. But it's one of those things where I appreciate if the Dodgers do I'm not close enough to it, even being someone that's around the team throughout the season and everything else. We're not close enough to it to say, oh, the Dodgers are taking it serious this time, because there's not one player on the Dodgers roster in 2022 and 2023 that didn't want to win the World Series, that didn't want to win the NLDS, that didn't want to win, move on to the NLCS. Like, there's none of them. They all wanted to. And there's no, just because you grit your teeth or whatever it is that people want to see from these guys in terms of that shows me they care more. It's one of those things where at the end of the day, it sucks, but it also is a job. Like, there's people like to separate it, or people like to use it different ways in terms of it is a job at the end of the day, and that's just really what it comes down to. Like, these guys have families, as we saw with Freddie this year. Some things are bigger than baseball, and it comes down to, if they lose, yes, it sucks, but it's not the end of their world. It's not the end of our world as fans either. Like, it's just a matter of, that's the way it goes. But all in all, to say that whatever the Dodgers are walking around with different, I hope it's true. Like, I hope that this is what matters. That they have the intensity this year. They whatever, blah, blah. But ultimately, it's going to come down to who pitches better, who hits better, and who plays defense better. And ultimately, it's going to come down to guys, the big guys coming through. Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez. Like, those guys come through. The other guys help out, and the pitching staff comes together as a whole. Somebody has to step up. Like, every year, you can probably go back for a while, and every year you can find one player or one pitcher that steps up for a team. Last year, Evan Carter, the rookie, had a strong postseason for the Rangers and struggled a little bit this year. Jordan Montgomery had, a great postseason run last year and struggled a lot for the Diamondbacks this year. You go back to Eddie Rosario in 2021 against the Dodgers. Like, he went back to Eddie Rosario after that. Like, he was just a okay baseball player, that year. But yeah, that year, like 2021, the Braves had multiple guys kind of step up. They had Jock in the first round, they had Rosario in the CS, and they had Soler in the World Series. And you can go back all the way to, and I don't want to say this name, but Madison Bumgarner. He stepped up and came through for the Padres the Giants in 2014. Like, and I think that's the one thing. Like, when the Dodgers won in 2020, I don't feel there was one specific obviously Corey Seager carried them and had the MVP awards in the CS and the World Series. But he was Corey Seager. Like, he wasn't somebody that to expect. But sometimes that's all you need. Like, it doesn't have to be a random player. It can be your best player or one of your best hitters being one of your best hitters. Like, that's all it takes, is one guy to, play either one up to what he is, or two, play better than what he is in terms of the regular season. And pitchers too. Like, if Walker Buehler all of a sudden is October Walker Buehler again, or if Landon Knack just decides to never give up a run again, or Edgardo Henriquez makes the roster and he decides to have a 15 innings pitched, no runs allowed run through the gauntlet of the playoffs, like, that would be great. That's ultimately what's going to decide if the Dodgers win, not if they're carrying extra intensity or have an edge to them, or they feel different. But I'm not going to knock it if it works or if it doesn't work, whatever it is. But I appreciate Dave Roberts putting it out there, I guess. So we'll see. And that's always going to be the nature of this, is we'll see. We can only do so much as fans. We don't, as much as we may think, we don't have any insight or addition into if the Dodgers win or not. And sometimes I wish we do, but we don't. So, all right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts. You can subscribe and get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube. And appreciate you guys in the YouTube comments today. Like I said, the lighting's not quite right here. I know I had a little bit of a dancing shadow behind me a couple of times, but don't worry, there's no spirits in here. It's just having to use this background and not great lighting doesn't help so much. So we make sure to check out Locked On MLB podcast with our pal Sully, getting you through the postseason. You can go to Locked On Sports Today or Locked On Sports Los Angeles on YouTube. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. You can go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You get texts from us with any updates on the Dodgers. We stay vigilant, so you don't have to. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. You can find Jeff on Twitter at SnyDog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us with any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or if you're at home, text my advice by podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.